Is the fighting continuing in Verbove? Has Ukraine occupied Russian fighting positions outside of the town? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 31st, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's try to get some answers on this. All right, taking a look at the control map. First off, we have seen, this is as of the 30th yesterday, you can see Russian forces being pushed back, but Ukrainian areas of control are still limited. So there's just a lot of heavy fighting all across this front line. You can see when we measure it out, we're talking about easily 2 kilometers where neither side has effective control. So this is a huge swath of terrain that is extremely crucial, especially this area right here. This would allow, of course, Ukrainian forces to occupy Russian fortifications outside the town and would grant them access inside the Russian fortification lines, the so-called Sotovikin line, which when we zoom out, you can see that it is effectively an unbroken line of defenses stretching across the front lines, right? Where it only ends up being able to be penetrated right here, right at Verbove. And if Ukrainian forces can get into it, it seems more likely that they're going to be able to turn and roll Russian forces, right? They're going to be attacking for this incredible defensive shield from the flanks, right? It's the difference. Imagine if the Mongols attack the Great Wall from the front versus being on the Great Wall and attacking from the flanks. It wouldn't even be the same. Nothing about that fighting would be the same. They'd be on equal footing. So that is why this is such heavy fighting at the moment. But there's also some other significant changes, right? Probably a function of the fact that both sides are going all in on this. First, you can see that a relatively small chunk of territory, right? This small fork in the river is at least listed now as contested. Russian forces moving their positions somewhat to the south. This is near Nevelsky, outside of Avdiivka, somewhere where we've seen a fair amount of fighting by both sides. But I think this probably is just a function of repositioning, commanders moving to slightly more advantageous positions. The other significance is outside of well to the south of Bakhmut near Kurdyumivka. You can see that Russian forces, again, withdrawing from this forested area, moving slightly backwards, right? Just pulling their forces back, again, probably under some level of pressure. We have heard that Ukrainian forces are attempting to continue their offensive work outside of Bakhmut. But again, this far south of Kurdyumivka, it's probably not much more than a shaping operation. In the north, we're actually seeing some Russian advances. You can see this is the 29th. There's the 30th in this Kremina forest. But as you guys can see, it's very limited in terms of infrastructure development. This is small numbers of troops, relatively speaking, conducting operations in a fairly large area. And as there's one thing we've known, it's that these forests are excellent defensive areas. And so even yielding some forest for others, again, it's not that significant. And I say the same thing when you see Ukrainian forces push in, when you see Russian forces push in. Small numbers of troops are just going to cause bigger swings. It's just like in the stock market. When you have a very low price stock that isn't traded that often, it's very common to see the price whiplash in ways that a larger stock wouldn't, because there's just so much. It's just like a battleship has to turn very slowly, but a speedboat, a small light boat, can turn very quickly. So that's what we're seeing here. When we look over at the combat map, you can see that Ukrainian forces in the last 4 hours are reporting success, but only in the Novoprokopivka direction. So there appear to be continuing to advance along this axis here, moving towards Tokmak. But I think this is more of a shaping operation, forcing Russian forces to continue to deploy their troops and shore up this highway here. I'll be the one to tell you, you can see when we look at the fortifications, right, you could see that Russia really spared no expense to ensure Tokmak and the road to Tokmak was defended. You can see it's protected by no less than, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers of trenches, guys. This is probably one of the most tightly defended roads in the world right now. Is the road to Tokmak. So I wouldn't sit there and say that there's some pending Ukrainian breakthrough. What I think this more is about providing relief to the troops pushing in Verbove, trying to occupy these Russian positions and fixing Russian forces in place so that when these troops from Verbove can get into the Russian trench lines, you could see, right, the Russian forces maintaining this defense of Novoprokopivka, they're going to be fixed in their spots. And then if Ukrainian troops can get into these trench lines and curve them around, it's going to be a really bad day for those troops. They're going to be dealing with their fortifications being almost entirely circumvented. So I think that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing a fix and a finish in these areas, but it's going to be tough. I think, honestly, in order to really start to roll Russian forces, Ukrainians are probably going to have to take Verbove and hold this position as a defensive strong point, as kind of the nexus, because Russia's going to try to be counterattacking and try to get back its trenches. So Ukraine's going to have to hold this point firmly and then begin to roll Russian forces along this entrenched position. Anyway, when we look at Twitter, right, the rumor mill, there's a lot of talk, but there truthfully is not that much in terms of real information on whether or not the Ukrainian forces have penetrated this so-called Sotovikin line. It's unclear. Here's some NASA's firms. This is their. This is a satellite that detects heat signatures that was developed to detect fires, but now is used primarily to indicate where the fighting is heaviest. And you can see that this argues that early Ukrainian shelling was well on to the eastern side of Verbove, whereas now it's moved quite a bit towards central Verbove, which can be an indicator that usually what you will do in these light infantry situations is you will have your fires move in advance of your infantry, especially when you have to conduct a frontal assault on an entrenched position. So the fires will shift into Verbove as the infantry follows closely. These precision fires and how close the infantry tracks with the artillery is key. But I think overall, that's what this is indicating to us, is that there's light infantry moving in, that the preparatory fires phase is finished. Anyway, guys, if you're interested in seeing the combat videos from this fighting, I am dropping a video today doing a look at all the leaked videos from this conflict. It's in the members only section of combatvetnews.com. If you are interested in supporting the channel and getting access to my twice weekly updates, analyzing the on the ground combat videos, you can support the channel. Any one of these tiers will get you access. But I can't even show you the thumbnails of the videos because they are that well, I don't do ones that are pointlessly graphic, but what I do is I don't pull any punches in terms of GoPro footage, drone footage, combat footage, and YouTube has demonetized it. Patreon has demonetized it. That's why I had to launch my own site. But if you want to support the channel, any one of these tiers will get you access, and it gives us the insight into the fighting on the ground that we just can't get anywhere else. So I'll see you guys over at combatvetnews.com later today for that video drop. Okay, taking a look at the Institute for the Study of War, there's a lot of hand-wringing about these drone strikes, Ukraine drone striking Russian planes, Russian forces conducting drone strikes on Kiev. But what they do point out is that on August 30th, ISW assesses that Ukrainian light infantry, they say likely reconnaissance elements, did infiltrate Russian field fortifications near Verbove on August 30th. That makes sense, right? These reconnaissance elements are probably identifying targets for their artillery, probably gathering information that is going to dictate how the main body is going to conduct their assault. They're probably looking for minefields, fortifications, just anything to indicate how Ukrainian troops need to operate to successfully seize these trenches and fortifications outside of Verbove, right? Information is going to be key, and there's a lot that you can't get from a drone, that you need a human being on the ground. It does indicate that Russian control over the settlement is degraded, but this is not the same thing as having established control. That's probably why we're seeing that wide swath of contested areas on the maps. Of course, Ukrainian forces continuing to push in all of these directions. And the only other interesting piece of news is actually that the EU is importing a record volume of liquefied natural gas from Russia, a 40% increase from 2021. And while the EU's goal is to reduce dependence on Russian fossil fuels, Spain and Belgium still have a need for liquid natural gas. And these imports, of course, are fueling the Russian war machine, which is a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul. But you guys know as well as I do that the European nations are happy to support Ukraine as long as it doesn't damage their economy at home. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for you. Thank you so much to our Colonel tier members at combatvetnews.com. Thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. Really couldn't do this without you guys. And thank you to all the members at combatvetnews.com. I appreciate you so much, and I will see all you guys in the next one. Cheers.